In Jeremiah 29, verses 13 and 14, we read this: "You'll seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and I will restore your fortunes." Today, I want to tell you a story about a place that was just a very small village at the beginning of the 1900s. Pencoed, near Bridgend in the Vale of Glamorgan, was once a small community of coal miners, though now it's a large dormitory village for both Bridgend and Cardiff. It was the birthplace of David Howell, who was the Dean of St David's Cathedral in the early 1900s. He was very well known in Pencoed and greatly respected and even revered by the local people. Just before he died at the beginning of 1903, he published a famous prophetic plea concerning Wales. And this is what he wrote, and I'm going to read it to you. What is Wales's greatest need? Some point to the need for political reform, a better educated ministry, a better health service and social services, all things which are important. But are any of these things the main need of Wales at this time? In my estimation, there is a greater need than all of these. Something that will reach into the soul of a nation, something that will create a greater effect than all of them, something more lasting in its fruit and all-encompassing in its blessings, spiritual and temporal. Spiritual revival. Not reformation, but revival. And I don't mean local missions either. Rather, I'm speaking about a need for a high tide of the Spirit flooding over the whole country that will touch all classes with the baptism of the Holy Spirit. This surely is Wales's greatest need at this time. And he continued, "Reader, will you do your part in this blessed work? Will you give yourself fully to this cause, morning, midday, and night? Will you do your best jointly to work with others so that you can create circles of intercession? Great is your privilege. Great, too, is your responsibility. Oh, that you would rend the heavens and come down." His words were particularly taken to heart in the place where he was born and grew up. Pencoed Baptist Chapel had been built in Pencoed after the Great Revival of 1859. Significantly, it was called Peniel after the place where Jacob wrestled with the angel of God in order to obtain God's blessing. By 1900, however, the chapel had become pretty dead spiritually. Then in 1900, a new minister was ordained there. He was Edward Gwynhefin Thomas. He'd been a coal miner as a teenager and became a Christian at the age of 14. He trained for the ministry at the Baptist College on Richmond Road in Cardiff. And he was known in Pencoed as a caring pastor, a passionate preacher, and a man mighty in prayer. In the spring of 1903, 4 teenagers from Peniel, all coal miners, inspired by the preaching and example of their minister, took Dean Howell's plea to heart and vowed to pray every night after work for revival to come to Pencoed. They met to pray 6 times a week after work on a hilltop near the chapel. 16 and 18-year-old Albert and Ivor Powell, who lived just below the hill, would probably have been there. A few unsaved workmates began to come with them out of curiosity, and some of them got converted listening to the praying. Members of the church found out what was going on and began to join with them, though others said they were wasting their time, but they continued undeterred. At the end of 1904, Edward Gwynhefin Thomas wrote about what subsequently happened. He said this: "The flame reached the whole church, and we were moved with the spirit of prayer and with a passion for souls. In an incredibly short time, the whole neighborhood was ablaze with the divine fire. On Sundays, as many as 6 meetings would be held, 30 souls on one Sunday coming to the Lord. Never shall I forget that summer. It was a time of unspeakable joy. The after effects upon God's people were very great. Speaking for myself, my own heart and life were searched as never before. Was I fully surrendered to the Lord? The outcome of it all was that I was yielded wholly to God, casting away all known sin and making God's glory the one aim of my life and my ministry. What an experience followed. What joy." 4 lads, fully giving themselves to seek God for blessing, as did Jacob at Peniel, had an impact on the whole church. And revival came to Pencoed as a result, even before the main Welsh revival broke out towards the end of 1904, in which a further 150 people were saved in the village, many of whom were added to the chapel at Pencoed. I'm going to finish by reading what I started with, that verse. "You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and I will restore your fortunes."